I'd like to start with policy. Everything rests, Chair, on a single, poorly defined policy that a road should be built in this green corridor. Everything about this application rests on a badly drawn line on a map, as though someone just got a felt tip and sort of casually drew an arrow. That badly drawn arrow means we take every other piece of planning legislation, of guidance, of our own local plan, and we throw them all out. I'm going to read just some of the policies this application fails to comply with. Although this isn't an exhaustive list, Chair, I've just picked a few for this meeting. You can see more in this report on pages 93, 94, 95, 106, 107, and so on. First, our core strategy says we will protect the natural environment through effective planning to reduce the need to travel. That policy thrown out in favour of increasing the capacity to travel. More from our core strategy. Open spaces contribute significantly to the life of our residents. The vision for open space is to enhance public open spaces, including those associated with the Thames and Kennet. It is vitally important to maintain and enhance open space provision. That policy thrown out. Planning permission will not be granted for any development that would detract from the character or appearance of the Thames Valley or the Kennet. Green corridors along the River Thames and Kennet will be protected. That policy thrown out. The sites and detailed document offers the same protection, Chair, and our central area action plan is clear that the Cole woodland is protected, stating that proposals that would result in the loss of any open space there will not be permitted. That policy thrown out. I think it's about now, Chair, people are going to start to wonder, is there any point in us having policies at all? And this is before we even start on the emerging policies in the draft local plan. Policy EN12 is clear. Permission will not be granted for development that negatively affects the green network, the Thames and the Kennet. That policy, astonishingly, is thrown out before we've even adopted it. I think it's time we threw out some national policies as well. The NPPF states that planning has an environmental role. We must contribute to protecting and enhancing our natural environment. And as part of this, we must help to improve biodiversity. That policy, a government policy now, thrown out. And as your update pack shows, whilst the applicant thinks this is a great application, as we've just heard, almost everyone else disagrees, including the specialists in biodiversity at the Wildlife Trust, at Friends of the Earth, Caversham Grove, even the council's own ecologist and natural environment tree specialist all disagree. NPPF paragraph 73 and 74 make it clear. Existing open space should not be built on unless the loss is replaced by equivalent or better provision. Nope, that's not happening. That one's thrown out too. What about law? That would be good. The Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act 2006 says that as a local authority, this council must conserve biodiversity. It must restore or enhance any habitat destroyed by development. That's obviously not happening here, Chair, so we're throwing out government legislation as well. I'd like to say a few words about procedure too. It's a standard developer trick to offer up a really terrible scheme, only to then offer a slightly less terrible scheme that would have seemed awful were it not now compared to the first terrible scheme. Your committee, Chair, has criticised developers for this before, and now we see our own council doing it. Not only that, they've tried to hide the reality of this scheme from residents. Page 110 of your report, one of my favourite pictures. It's a picture of the Kennet Mouth with a number of enormous willow trees hiding the MRT as it goes through. Is that a misleading image, Chair? Do those trees exist? Will they exist after the scheme has been built? No. Willows of that size could be planted. I suppose the area could look like that in 100 years. As it is, that is entirely misleading. Those trees do not and will not exist. The scheme makes repeated misleading claims. It says it will improve access to green space. I don't think that one's even worth discussing, as it obviously won't. The applicant claims that this scheme will bust congestion in East Reading. Our report before us seems to repeat that, stating a 1 to 3% reduction in traffic, not congestion, traffic, on some roads. It fails to mention the increase on other roads. It fails to mention that that is only a PM reduction. There is an increase in traffic in the morning as a result of this scheme. Confirmation of that, Chair, is found in paragraph 628, which shows the MRT would result, and I quote, in an increase in traffic in the AM peak time on the London Road. So I should be clear, Chair, it's my opinion this council should not be allowed to do anything that increases traffic at peak morning times when children are going to school. That is unacceptable. It's unacceptable for my little boy's lungs. It's unacceptable for everyone else's children in Newtown and East Reading. And it's even another policy we're throwing out. Policy DM19 states development that would detrimentally affect air quality will not be permitted. So let's be blunt. Will this scheme relieve congestion in East Reading? The modelling shows it will not. There's only one measure of congestion in this planning application, and that states the effect on driver delay is negligible to, at best, not significant. The applicant also claims this scheme will relieve air pollution in East Reading. The modelling shows it will not. The environmental statement states the air quality effects of the development are not significant. The impact of the proposed development is considered to be not significant in relation to human health. To confirm this, the council's own business case states the overall air quality impact of the development is insignificant. That's on the applicant's own modelling. There will be no improvement to air quality. We find alternatives haven't been properly considered. This matters, Chair, not because no council should ever take such a cavalier approach to a development as to not consider the alternatives, but because government legislation, the town and country planning regulations, make it clear the application must detail alternatives and must ensure committee members are in full possession of the facts and know the environmental impact that each alternative would have. So there's a challenge for all the committee members. Do we all know the alternatives? Do we all know their environmental impact? If we don't, this application has failed. Objections to this application include the loss of amenity for local residents. The nationally important Thames path beside the river will be plunged into semi-darkness for most of the day. We've heard from local residents and local ward councillor about the impact this development will have on the people of East Reading. The planning officer agrees in his report, page 104, that use of the towpath will drop off. As an aside, Chair, let's look at the astonishing use of shadows on the image on page 113 of your report. Yeah, it's like spot the ball, spot the sun. The small tree to the right casts a shadow right across to that man. The enormous concrete edifice above him casts barely a shadow at all. Just a little bit onto the grass. Either someone's computer-aided design wasn't aiding them very well, or this is another image designed to trick you and I into thinking this road will have a minimal impact. We have a tree policy, Chair. You might not know it, given this proposal seeks to fell a minimum 700 plus trees and replace 80. We've discussed trees. We have the farcical situation of not knowing what a tree is. And where was all this information? Hidden in a table, not mentioned in a summary so that we could understand it, not included in the officer's original report. Councillor Page stating at public meetings there would be a loss of some 80 trees. He meant, of course, 800. Policy CS38 says individual trees, groups of trees, hedges and woodlands will be protected from damage or removal, and the borough's vegetation cover will be extended. Another policy thrown out, Chair. Residents are questioning, does this council care about the environment at all? It didn't even bother to complete a bird survey on the proposed site. How will history judge this scheme? Will it quietly file it under ridiculous ideas that should never even have been looked at, like the one-way IDR, the crosstown route, which was a road in exactly this location? Will our children thank us if we were to approve a concrete flyover with associated swamp? Will the people of Reading thank us? Is destroying Reading as a tourist destination by ruining its unspoiled Thameside really a good idea? In summary, Chair, this is a scheme that fails in its own stated aims. It fails against almost every policy we have, local and national, and it fails the people of Reading. Chair, I'm sure I'm only preaching to the converted here, and this committee will be minded to refuse this application, just as it has refused many that have been recommended for approval by our officers in the past. But I wanted to set out just why it should be refused on planning grounds. With a park and ride at the other end for just a handful of cars, and that's not even open on weekends, it's a road to nowhere. It's a road for the few and not the many. I know I'm here as a Green Party councillor, but we've got no monopoly on caring about the environment. And I'm sure that my Conservative and Labour colleagues on this committee will vote against this. And I move we refuse this application. Thank you, Chair.